Okay, this video is for a Twitter account named Muslim. My history of religion, and how I am where I am now. Where to begin? So, we'll do a timeline analysis. My family has been in Taos, New Mexico, on the dad's side since 1608. Mom's side, the Lovatos, have been in the 1700s, and this is all relevant, from Spain. They were Spanish Catholic conquistadors. Catholic conquistadors. So, my dad's side is where I get 30% Native American DNA, and the mom's side is more pure white Spanish. Well, the conquistadors followed the law of Moses. The Catholics imitated the Jews against the law, on the law of marriage, right? Against intermarriage. Sorry, I'm in a little mild psychosis right now. Coming home from church, the car in front of me was smoking weed, and the secondhand weed from the car in front of me ended up in the car I was in. Because technically it's illegal to smoke marijuana while driving, but God or man doesn't give a shit. So I'm constantly in psychosis from secondhand marijuana, which very rarely is anyone honest enough to admit that that's true, despite all the science proving it true. And that includes religious people, like the Mexican Catholics that I came from. Right. So, I was born in 1982. The inbreeding amongst the conquistador colonies led to the gene mutation of schizophrenia. A family history of schizophrenia means you have a hereditary predisposition, means you have a gene that is mutated. There's several genes, I think, that have been identified, including like a serotonin transporter gene, a dopamine transporter gene, a DO1, DO2, DISC1 receptors, things like that. Yeah. Anyway, larger dopamine receptors in amygdalas. So the inbreeding by the law of Moses, because Jews are also inbred, just like Catholics and Arabs, etc. I'm sure this will remind any Arabs or Muslims of their own community problems, right? Something common. Born in 1982, my parents were divorced by 1983, so they were influenced and corrupted by the drug and sex revolution in the United States, which is the anti-Christian, anti-church revolution. Marijuana was a key part of that. Really, that's eugenics. I read a book, Jewish Eugenics, and other books before that. So, the elites push drugs and porn to reduce the population. The white American Christian population, white Christian America, was reduced before the replacement, the demographic replacement. Reduction prior to replacement, reduction occurred through drugs and pornography, especially marijuana. Marijuana was at the core of the drug and sex revolution, which was the anti-religious revolution. One of the ways that works is they figured out that homosexuality can be environmentally induced in a certain percentage of the population, the genetically inferior. And so they differential fertility. They socially engineered with marijuana and pornography and other drugs decline in the birth rate of the white Christian birth rate. This was a very specific thing, very, very exact science pushed by the elites. Now, technically, Christianity should have opposed that. Technically, Christianity is supposed to oppose drugs and pornography, but you see this weird subversion where the conservatives are, oh, well, freedom, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and they're retards, right? And so America, the de-Christianization, the decline of Christianity from the drug and sex revolution, influenced my Hispanic parents, the Mexican Catholic family. So my mom had my brother out of wedlock. I have an older brother. And my parents were divorced by the time I was 1 year old, which to me means they did not follow the laws of Catholicism about waiting until marriage before having sex. They got married because they were pregnant. They try to lie to me about that. So psychology has got me better at finding the truth than religion has. Not that I'm pro-secular or anti-secular. I just base this on results, not excuses and intentions. So parents divorced. In the 5th grade, which would be 1992, I was raised Catholic, by the way. This was going to Our Lady of Sorrows in Bernalillo, a tiny little town north of Albuquerque. 1992, I scored gifted and was eligible for grants into private school with my test scores. Now, as a poor Hispanic, that was my one chance out of poverty, thanks to the white people who were kind enough to build the government and put these programs in place to help me raise myself out of poverty. Unfortunately, my shitty Mexican family fucked that up and just slapped me right down. Now, how do they do that? How are Mexicans self-imposing poverty, right? How are they so against letting their own kind rise out of poverty? Why would they drag each other down and keep themselves down? It's very strange to me. It doesn't make any sense. Well, in that particular instance, when my test scores, my mom saw that I was really smart and I was getting bad grades in school. So she promised me a Wolverine toy with the retractable claws. In 1992, that was a big deal. So I got straight A's. The school was surprised. They tested me as gifted. And after that, they had a meeting with my mother and father, who hated each other. They did not get along. Now, my dad was offered custody. Both my parents knew that if I stayed in the house with my older gang member brother, I would have no chance in the future. My dad, corrupted by the drug and sex revolution, against Catholicism and Christianity, he got his degree in philosophy. So he was unable to feed and house himself, let alone me. Because he got his degree in philosophy and couldn't take custody, my brother was in kiddie prison at this time. He was already incarcerated at 12 years old. I was 10. Well, he got out that summer and forced marijuana on me. Now, I want to make something clear here. Had the Mexicans been able to stick to Catholicism, Christianity, just like Islam, is not genetic. It's environmental. It's nurture, not nature. It's a culturally transmitted trait. Had I been raised in a 2-parent household with a true Catholic family, that never would have happened. My dad would be working and my mom would be at home. They'd still be married because they waited to have sex until they got married to make sure they'd have a good, long-lasting marriage. And had an adult been present, my brother would never have had the opportunity to force marijuana on me. A good, responsible, moral adult, like a good white parent with good white families, right, would have prevented a 10-year-old having marijuana forced on him by his 12-year-old brother. Not my family. So, after quitting drugs and going sober, I began to really analyze these memories. Snoop Dogg, my brother loves Snoop Dogg and Cheech and Chong. Now, that is drug and porn propaganda. So the black market, the marijuana black market, was cultivated through media. Why was pro-marijuana glorification and product placement allowed in media while it was illegal? The bankers were profiting off both sides of the drug war, incarceration and consumption. Marijuana is a globalist agenda. Snoop Dogg and Death Row Records was founded by Jerry Heller, who is Jewish, and Leor Cohen, also Ashkenazi, all in the rap industry. Rap was just drug and porn propaganda, which influenced my brother and others to smoke marijuana, of course. Edward Bernays' product placement. And Cheech and Chong was produced by Lou Adler. So when I say the Jews behind the weed, I don't mean all Jews. There are religious Jews against marijuana, like Rabbi Moshe Feinstein. But then you get religious Jews who are like marijuana pushers because it's helping Tikkun Olam, right? It's destroying white Christian America, and therefore it's transforming it into multicultural, multi-ethnic, diverse America with drugs and porn. It's a corrosive and destructive element to not just the moral fabric that once held society together, but the ethnicity, the white Christian, culture. Capitalism destroyed Christianity? Yeah, but marijuana and porn, stuff like that. Absolutely. Anyway, so because my brother forced marijuana on me in 1992, this caused me to go homeless and schizophrenic instead of rising out of poverty with my test scores. Because in that meeting with my parents, the school told them that I was eligible for grants in a private school with my test scores. Now, those are the white schools, and white people had way better income than us brown Mexicans because of this shit like this. Right? We're Catholics, and my family used to tell me all this stuff about, oh yeah, the white people are rich because they follow the laws of God. They follow the 10 Commandments. Yeah, that's not true. Anyway, so that lasted. I ended up homeless, hitchhiking all over the country, until I electrocuted myself for whales and trees in 2008 on Orcas Island. Orca Avenger. Now, when that happened, the FBI arrested me, and at that point, I had quit all drugs but cannabis. Like, weed was the only thing in my system when I fried my hand off and parts of my feet. This period was largely atheist for me because the actions of Catholics fail to prevent this bad shit from happening. And I'll get more into that in a minute. Third degree burns over 40% of my body and a brain injury in the Puget Sound, which is a largely white, liberal, atheist, secular area. A hypersexualized hookup culture of drug abuse and addiction. Not one white, liberal atheist could be honest enough to admit that I had a mental illness, namely schizoaffective disorder, or that marijuana was setting it off. Now, the white people knew this. They're not stupid. This was deliberate. This was by design. And this includes Ashkenazi Jews like Saul Fortunoff, Levi Polkinen, etc. They all knew that I had something wrong with me. There's no way you can look at a guy who fried his fucking hand off and say, oh yeah, no, he's fine. There's nothing wrong with him. We didn't cause his schizophrenia. He's lying. Well, that's exactly what the white people did on Vashon Island. Well, eventually, I began to study neuroscience and psychology because I realized I have to save myself from a corrupt society. And so I ended up, I want to get back into religion. I wanted to because I thought, well, if I return to Christianity, right, there was like this agonist-antagonist yin and yang relationship. I saw white people without Christianity as pagan, essentially. A hypersexualized culture, drug abuse and addiction, whitey can't live without the booze and the drugs, and the porn, etc. Well, so therefore, if I return to like Christian, conservative, like red states and stuff like that, there would be less drug use and more sexual morality. Boy, was I wrong about that. Not only was my family more Mexican than Catholic, most of the white Christians I know are more white than Christian. And so they're more guided by greed than, morality and things like that. And marijuana is a perfect example. They could care less about the victims of the cannabis industry because the money is what matters. Right? In the name of Jesus or something. Yeah. So, after that, I first attended an Episcopalian church, and I was going sober at that time, and they had strong alcohol in the wine, etc. And so that actually destroyed my sobriety and got me to start drinking again. I'm a really bad alcoholic because of Native American genetics. The Native American pancreas and liver does not secrete the enzymes necessary to process and metabolize alcohol into sugar. So Native Americans have a 13% alcohol overdose death rate. Among diabetes and kidney stones, statistics and things like that. And like right now, there's more whites that are doing methamphetamine in the United States than Native Americans, but there's more Native American methamphetamine overdose deaths than European American methamphetamine overdose deaths. Now, I would think that a strong religious country would have low rates of drug use, right? Do you think there's like a relationship where as Christianity increases in America, methamphetamine and fentanyl use and cocaine products would decline? Well, apparently Christianity, just like Islam and Judaism, fails to resist the corruption from money. The bankers control the church does not control the banks. Well, in this process, I moved back home in 2016. I wanted to do a third-person verification of all my hypotheses. And so I thought, well, if I'm wrong and it wasn't me, or if it was me and I'm just being a petulant child blaming everyone else but myself, well, then a different outcome will happen. This time I've quit drugs, I've quit drinking, I'm going to the gym every day, I'm doing non-narcotic pain management alternatives with the amputations on my feet, etc. Note, my family, I absolutely was accurate to identify as contributing factors to maladaptive thoughts and behaviors. And those are the Catholics. See, when I say the behavior of Catholics drove me away from religion, I don't just mean that. When I told my mom at one point that I was going to check myself into the state mental institution because I could not get help and care for my mental illness to save my life, even among the atheists in Seattle, which is weird because they're supposed to be the party of science. Well, my mom started crying, saying, "No, don't do it. They'll hold you down on a cold steel table and force needles in your veins." And I thought, well, what if I just take my medication voluntarily, right? But I realized that she was hiding something. Her involuntary emotional response meant there was something she wasn't telling me. And so I deduced from her involuntary emotional response that her mother was in that same mental institution. So I went behind her back, filed a personal representative request order through the courts, and gained access to my deceased grandmother on my mother's side medical records. She had been institutionalized at that same New Mexico State mental institution in Las Vegas, New Mexico, twice. They burned all the records after 10 years, so her records were destroyed by 1985, but they still had her ID card on file. Once in 1962 and once in 1974, she was hospitalized. One time 6 months, the other time 8 months. First time was voluntary, the second time was emergency order. Both times diagnosed paranoid schizophrenic. Now, my mom chose to lie to me by omission and not tell me about the family history of schizophrenia out of Catholicism. She said it was honor thy mother and thy father. And so she would be honoring her mother by telling her son, hey, we got a family history of schizophrenia, even as she watched me go homeless and fry my fucking hand off. She still kept her lip zipped. And other shit happened here that could have been prevented. I tried to get a mental health care from Vashon Youth and Family Services, and the guy failed to do it, and that led to me, getting in legal trouble, because my mental illness wasn't treated but exacerbated. All this could have been prevented by people just being fucking honest. And so I find that interesting that atheists, Jews, Muslims, Christians, none of them have been honest on this whole timeline about any of this stuff, right? And at one point, I actually asked Meta's artificial intelligence about secondhand marijuana setting off the schizophrenia, and AI was the only thing that was honest enough to say yes, and here's all these scientific, experiments that prove that yes, the cannabinoids in the secondhand smoke do enter the bloodstream, what's colloquially called the contact high, etc., and cannabinoids mimic reverse neurotransmitters that affect GABA and glutamate, which regulate dopamine and serotonin, and that's how it causes psychosis. I couldn't find a single religious person that was honest about that, or atheist for that matter. So, all these religions, Buddhism, Hinduism, Judaism, Islam, Christianity, or atheism, all have failed to simply be honest and tell the truth about marijuana setting off schizophrenia, let alone to actually and effectively prevent it. Right? They're controlled by Elon Musk and people like that who control social media. I'm pretty sure the Bible, and I don't know about the Quran or the Tanakh or the Torah, but I'm pretty sure the instructions in there were supposed to prevent outcomes like this, where billionaires control the population and reduce and replace it with drugs and porn. And money, right? That bankers shouldn't be the ones controlling everything because they have all the money. Somehow God is supposed to intervene, right? Yeah, that's not happening, is it? Anyway.